can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. Welcome back. Yeah. Someone asked me one time, when I do this, like right here, what am I doing? All right. And for me, it's at that moment, like when I sit down and I just do this right before I say hello, that's just my moment to just sit. Anyone have a crazy day today? Me too. Every day. My days are insane. Totally insane. You'd think running a Buddhist temple would be like, oh, you just sit and meditate all day long, you know? Anyone know about gallons per flush with toilets? We got a couple hands. I could have used you today, you know? Anyone know about 95-year-old window sash? Eddie, man, where you been all my life?
No, I'm staying up there.
Yeah.
I've been busy.
Yeah. It took me a long time to carve those out, to make them match perfectly. It's a new style we're going with. Just trying to pick out the paint color now.
I thought you might go stained glass, but you wouldn't bore.
Yeah. It's all the rage these days. That's what the kids are into, you know. So yeah, so for me, like that moment of just bringing my palms together, you know, I mean, I sit here day in and day out, week after week, year after year for a very long time. And you all show up here, believe it or not, crazy enough to actually, I think, to listen to stuff that I say. And so it's my opportunity to realize like, wow, you're all here to hear stuff. And whatever has gone on in my day or my week or my month or my 3 years cannot be in this moment. Because if it is, then I can't show up the way that I need to show up to be present with people that are here. And that's super important to me. So it's, for me, like I said, a reminder and an opportunity to just reflect in present moment, but also hopefully an example of what you all can do in your lives when you go into something that's important, which is very often you have important time that you spend with family, friends, you know, work, whatever it might be. There's important things in your life. And to show up and be fully present with that and to set down everything else for that brief moment is really critical. And so, you know, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily, before you start something like, yo, hang on, I need to like join palms and close my eyes. But somehow, some trigger, something in you that says, okay, I'm going to set everything else down and I'm just going to be present with what I'm about to engage in. And that very often will make that experience much easier, much kinder, much gentler, you And that's really why we practice. For those who are maybe here for the first time, we're not here to learn about how to be a great meditator. Is anyone in here going to spend the rest of their lives in a cave somewhere meditating? I didn't say how many of you want to. It's just not going to happen. So very often we might think like, oh, I'm going to learn to meditate. I'm going to figure out this Buddhist thing, and it's going to be the next thing that I conquer and master in my life. And then you're going to get in the car and you're going to get pissed off and scream at the person who just, got in front of you. Right? So this practice isn't about meditation, even though we're going to meditate in a little bit. Otherwise, you'd all leave completely disappointed. And you know me, I don't like to disappoint people. And it's not even about Buddhism. It's about you and how you engage and show up in the world. So we might call it intro to meditation and Buddhism, but that's just a ploy to get you all here. If the class was called Introduction to Yourself, like, I'm not going to that. Years ago, 5 years ago, when we had the Buddha Free location near San Diego State, and there was a big Vaughn's shopping plaza, and we were right next to Vaughn's. So there's Vaughn's and I-10 and Tapioca Express and Yogurtland and, the whole everything. And the window said free meditation. So everyone's like all in on the free meditation stuff, And I would joke and say, if it says free morality class, how many people would show up to that? So we want to skip all that stuff, and we just want to show up and meditate and learn about that Buddhist stuff. Because on the surface, it seems like it's taking us away from what? Ourselves, all your craziness. But then this stuff just becomes a temporary diversion from everything else that's going on. And early on, yes, use it that way. It's a temporary diversion. That's what I think most people start with. But then eventually you begin to realize, like, okay, no more diversions, no more escapes, no more quick fix solutions. Time to learn the introduction to Jeff. Oh, you don't want to learn that one, trust me. Right? But the introduction to yourself. And when you begin to bring that into your life, people will thank you, and you'll feel a whole lot better. Once you get through the whole critiquing yourself and thinking you're a terrible person, once you get past all that, then you'll be great. So, all right. So with that, we'll start with the meditation, because that's what the sign would say if we had one. And to those joining virtually, welcome. Nice to see you all. There's a chat box there. Feel free to say hello. So for those who are maybe sitting for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, just make sure you're comfortable. Also relaxing the shoulders. Hands are on the knees or in the lap. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. If you need to move, simply move and just return to stillness. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, release that thought. Return to breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment. Just sitting. Breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's not from anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. It is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning how to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, and focused. Distracted by nothing, and disturbed by no one. This practice is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not the escape, as I mentioned earlier. It's direct perception into the present moment. And very often, many present moments of our lives are incredibly difficult. And it's actually our attempt and effort to run away and escape from the present moment that creates so much conflict. This practice is learning to be with things as they arise. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's not a business. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter all day long. And that, my friends, is why it's so easy, because you just have to spend all day long being nice to people, which I know many of you in this room, and I'm sure that's easy for all of you. So thank you for being the people that just spend all day long being nice to each other. It's nice that we can gather with such friendly, nice people. I'm always amazed with all the millions of people in the city that we get 50 of you together and you're all nice. I feel very honored. It's hard to be nice to people. Super hard. We don't have enough time to figure out why, but it's really hard. The Buddha would, I think, boil it down to the fact that we have these things called an ego, pride, sense of self, our own views that we're attached to, our own way of seeing the world that we think everybody else should just agree with. And these are the reasons that we have conflict. And that's like literally throughout our physical day. Then there's the time where you're just sitting around for 3 hours doing absolutely nothing, but telling yourself a million stories in your head about everything that's wrong with you and everybody else in the world. And that's when you're doing nothing. Next time you sit around and tell yourself stories in your head about whatever, at least try to come up with some good things about yourself. Don't be afraid to highlight some positive things about you and your life. At least give that 5 minutes. If you're going to sit there for 3 hours thinking about what a terrible person you are, give yourself 5 minutes of thinking about something good about yourself. So, and if you run out of things after 2 minutes, call me. So I'll pause there. I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we use the rest of our brief time this evening to address whatever's on your mind. So thoughts, questions, and again, virtual folks, thanks for being here. Feel free to throw any questions or thoughts down there and I'll do my best to respond as well. Yeah.
Let me get this out of the way.
All right.
I know you got this one. So how do you engage in activism and advocacy? Like, get out of inaction into action, but not go too far. There's a middle path that Buddhism talks about. Can you kind of run with that a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the question, what I'm hearing, just to repeat for those virtual, how to engage in activism without going too far and finding the Buddhist practice of the middle path, right? So If I sat one-on-one with everybody in this room, there's probably 50 of us here, we would have a lot of disagreements. But I'm not attached to mine, and I'm not attached to yours. I'm going to practice not attaching to myself or you. I'm going to try to understand, what do I think? What are my views? And I'm going to try to understand what you think and what are your views. And I will probably disagree with a lot of them. You know, maybe not you personally, but you get my point here. And can I do that without getting emotionally drawn in to where I become angry and divisive and disrespectful? And as long as I'm attached to me thinking I'm right, then that's going to be really difficult. If I can, as a practitioner looking at Buddhist teachings, understand that we all have different perceptions, all of us. We perceive the world differently. Every single one of us in this room. We only see things through our eyes, and that's all. And from what we see and what we hear, in Buddhism, there's the senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought. Looking at consciousness. Everything we see, everything we taste, everything we smell, everything we touch brings consciousness into existence. And from that, we form some sort of idea and view and opinion. And then we roam around thinking that we're right. You know what the person next to you is doing? Roaming around thinking the same thing, thinking that they're right. Okay? Thich Nhat Hanh, and I've said this many times, but he says nirvana, freedom from liberation, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And I found this, my view of this teaching is that not my views are going to disappear one day, but can I have views and not be attached to them? Can I try to understand others? And in this practice, I mean, this world is a disgusting mess right now. There's so much anger and hatred and violence and racism and patriarchy. I mean, it's just disgusting what's going on in the world. By all means, please engage. Do not stay silent. Please engage. But engage in a way that you're coming from a place of compassion, understanding, love, and kindness. Not from a place of anger and hatred and rage, because that's what a lot of those views are based in. Fear, anger. And because someone's views are based in fear and anger, that doesn't give us the right to judge them and think that they're terrible people and that they're wrong. They're different. And it creates a lot of pain. But begin to understand why they think this way. Little 3-year-old kids, what they're taught, how they're raised. And it's really easy to say, well, when they grow up, they should know better. And when you have a bad habit that you've been trying to kick for 30 years, unhealthy actions, behaviors, patterns, ways of living that you know are just not good for you or anyone else, and yet you still can't stop, right? Now imagine, and many of us in this room who are raised with certain views and beliefs that are taught by our society, by our family, by wherever we learn it. And all of a sudden you wake up and you're 30 years old and you're supposed to just automatically stop being a racist. That's really hard. You know? It's not right. But they don't need more hatred and anger. They need wisdom. They need compassion. So, yeah. Yeah.
Can I
Oh, no, Elena, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're good, you're good, you're good, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about fear of deception?
Fear of deception. Can you give me a little more to work with regards to the word deception, and give me just ramble some other thought about that, like where you're going with that?
Like the thought of being deceived or not being told the truth or
Oh, okay.
other things happening.
Yeah. So to talk about the fear of deception, fear of being deceived, not being told the truth, you're not being told the truth. It's a lot easier to just see it that way. All we're being told is other people's senses of reality. And there's nothing to fear. That's just ultimate truth. We are all unenlightened folks doing our best to get there each day. And as humans, we lie, we cheat, we steal, we manipulate, we take advantage. Again, not the 50 of you in this room, but everybody else out there. We only bring together the good people here, you know. Like the show The Good Place, right? To have fear destroys us. And, you know, I'm still sticking with everything I just said, but that's really difficult to bring into our lives. A more, I think, conventional response is to begin to understand that when we fear something or someone, we're really attached to us and having something taken from us. Now, always an asterisk goes without saying, anytime things like this come up, by all means, please find yourself, do not put yourself in situations of harm, abuse, things like that. Remove yourself from these situations, right? So when I talk about this type of stuff, I'm not talking about, you know, if somebody's physically abusing us, that we shouldn't be afraid of that and we shouldn't move far, far away from that. By all means, yes. But what I'm talking about specifically is not that situation. Very often we just roam around and we're just afraid of everyone and everything taking advantage of us. And very often that's because that's what's happened to us our entire lives. Since we were little children, we've had that fear. And you know what we are now? Big children. We're the 5-year-old that never got over that. And so that has been deeply rooted in our consciousness for a long time. To be able to open your heart and trust is critical. This is where I'm going to contradict everything I said at the beginning, right? I think in a very practical, conventional sense, if we can't learn to open our hearts to try to trust and love people, we're going to miss a lot. But know that as you open up your heart, as you love people, as you engage in connection, relationships, care, and love for others, you'll also get hurt. It's just what happens. But to stay closed off and to stay afraid, we're actually not even allowing these opportunities to potentially occur. So there's incredible openness and love and care and all that gentle, you know, beauty. And then there's absolute just heartbreaking, shattered, feeling crushed, devastated. Oh no, I'm never going to live another day in my life. You know, there's complete opposite ends of that spectrum. And that's life. That's human. I'm sure most, if not all of us in this room have been at, you know, some stage on that scale, spectrum. But yeah, when we're afraid, we miss out. And last thing I'll say on that is, you know, other people's deception, kind of going back to the original question, taking advantage, deceitfulness, that's not because of you. It's always important to remember that, which hopefully you realize that, but for anyone, that's not your fault. That's who they are, that's how they are. And they've probably been that way for a long time, and they might not change. They might. So you want to be cautious there as well. But that's their mess, as I often say about everything, that's their mess, not yours. You know? So, I don't know. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, so sorry. I was gonna ask you a question to follow up what you were saying. I didn't expect you to say racism,
Oh, yeah.
but let's, that's perfect to talk about.
Yeah.
The thing that was going through my mind. You were talking about how, we were talking about activism, being engaged. And you talked about, ego and only your perception of things and appreciate. So I guess one of my questions is, is there right and wrong? And or is it just all a perception? And the second part of the question is, if something is wrong, I need help how to be engaged in a way not to get caught up and charged and attacking and
Yeah.
so I got a jumble of stuff.
Sure. No, that's great. And, clearly I can just simply answer what every philosopher for the last thousands of years has been trying to figure out, which is right versus wrong. I can sum that up for you. Right? I'm joking. There should be laughter right about now. Sometimes my sarcasm just people actually think I'm, So the question of really the heart of your question is there right and wrong? Is that fair to say to start?
Sure, let's start.
Yeah, because of our perceptions, right? So my understanding of the Buddhist teachings is that, yes, like you said, we all have our perceptions of reality. And I think one way to look at it is there are certain topics that I could bring up, and I'm pretty certain every one of us in this room, if I did a show of hands and said, do we all agree with whatever? Yes, we'd all be on board. Do we think that's good? Yep. Do we think that's bad? Yep. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that'd be somewhere in the middle. Now, if this group dropped a mile down the street, some restaurant, some bar, some club, we went to some other city, some other state, some other country, and asked the exact same questions, you're not going to get everybody agreeing or everybody saying right versus wrong, right or wrong. You're going to get a whole bunch of different answers. Let me ask you this. Something to ponder. There's really no answer. But does it matter? Like if I said to you, actually, I don't even want you to answer this. I just want you to think about this. If I said to you, yes, there is right, and yes, there is wrong, could you always do what's right and never do what's wrong? Could you? That's the question, sorry. If you knew this was always right and this was always wrong, could you spend the rest of your life, every moment, always doing right and never doing wrong? Probably not. Nor could probably any of us in this room.
Although I'll give you a different answer too. It also depends on what it is.
Of course, it depends. That's why I didn't give any specifics. Of course. Right? So, for me as a practitioner, I'm always going to look at the intention behind anything. Right versus wrong is just a perception. Now, if my intention of something is coming from a place of compassion, understanding, loving kindness, right, for the benefit of others, not forgetting myself as well, then I'm in my own unenlightened mind going to say, this is good. Right? I mean, the Buddha's teachings on the Eightfold Path, different translations for it, but specifically says right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So by that, it tells you if there's right 8 things, then there's also what? Wrong 8 things. But again, that translation to me, you often hear correct view, right view. But to me, I don't see those as right or wrong. I see them as understanding the intention behind the action. And if my intention is to bring pain and suffering and hatred towards someone, then I'm going to say this is wrong in my unenlightened view. But those same things that I'm saying are wrong, somebody else is going to say are right. That's why I asked the question, again, not to be answered. I mean, I don't want to take away, you feel free to answer, but it wasn't really a question to be answered. It was more of us trying to determine right versus wrong. We have a hard enough time treating customer service people the right way. We have a hard enough time not getting mad at the person making our coffee because they put too many pumps of whatever in it. Our latte isn't frothy enough. Our clothes don't look the right way. Well, we paid for it, it's a little bit off. Our meal wasn't prepared perfectly. Well, I paid for it. I want it to be a certain, whatever. We have a hard enough time treating people with kindness around those types of daily things. So to kind of jump into this whole like ultimate right versus wrong, I think it's safest to come back to intention and know that there are, in my unenlightened Jeff's ignorant view, there's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of things that are filled with ignorance, anger, right? Greed. I mean, that's the 3 poisons in Buddhism, the second noble truth: greed, anger, ignorance, delusion. There's a lot of people out there living with tremendous amount of greed, anger, and delusions and ignorance. And they bring that into the world and they treat people that way. And it's disgusting. So to put it in a box and just say it's wrong, I don't know that the people doing it don't care if it's right or wrong. That's kind of my point about trying to identify ultimately something is right or wrong. Those actions, those behaviors are not healthy, and they bring tremendous pain and heartache and torture. And they should absolutely be stopped. But as soon as you make right or wrong, to me, that brings into judgment. And then we're judging people, and then we're criticizing them, and then we're trying to, label them. Anytime we have caused harm to somebody, which we all have done, it's because we were hurting. It was our own ignorance. It was our own anger. And we did something that caused harm to somebody. I talk about this a lot, but 20 years of working in prisons, psych units, people who've murdered, people who've raped, people who've done horrific, disgusting things. It's really easy to just say they're wrong, they're terrible people. But then you trace back and you see them at 7 years old in the court systems, growing up, being abused, on drugs by 9. And then now they're 40 doing these things. And we just want to dismiss them as if they're terrible people. They never had a chance. So there's a vicious, vicious cycle in not just our society, but all societies that we're dealing with. So I'm kind of expanding on why. Maybe I'm just trying to defend why I'm not big on saying right versus wrong. Yeah. So another 1,000 years, we can continue figuring that one out. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? We'll do one more before we wrap up here.
Would you talk a little bit about these three beautiful golden statues, where they're from and what they signify?
Yeah.
Symbolize?
So I'll send you a link. There's a really cool, I think when we first put them in and I gave a talk on them, which was much longer than, the summary I'll give you right now, but they were gifted to us about 4 years ago from a couple that, had been on the journey with us getting here and acquiring this place, which was a miracle in its own right. And they asked us what we wanted to complete the main shrine area. And so for us, at least specifically a couple of us with a background in Taiwanese Buddhism, this is what's there everywhere. Western culture, and this is a bit of a longer story, and this was the first night. And I'll never forget, Laverne was sitting right here. And brief background, when we were selecting them, and they actually sent us little 3D models of them, they were made by people in Taiwan who've been making temple statues for many generations. And they sent us little 3D print models of them, different colors, versions, styles. And me being like the American Jewish kid, I was like, we're not putting big gold statues. Because big gold statues mean things to people in this culture, right? You go to Asian cultures, Asian countries, just about every statue is golden. There are Mahayana sutras, they talk about the golden rays of light emanating from the Buddha. So the Buddha and the color golden, as if just glowing like the beautiful sun, keeping everybody warm, is a lot of where that comes from. Our culture, big gold stuff, gaudy, flashy, So I'm like, all right, I've been leading this temple for 13 years, and now I'm going to have to sit and explain these. This is 4 years ago, right? Now I'm going to have to sit and explain these three big golden statues, right? So the day they come in, it's a whole long story. I'll send it to you. But the day they come in, it's a beautiful, we did a whole ceremony ritual. The truck came up, and it's actually a funny story because this big truck comes up, and this big, what's the word I'm looking for? Big truck. There's a word for those things. Say again?
Box truck?
Box truck, yeah, but isn't it semi, right? Yeah, big truck shows up. We're all outside. The guy jumps out. He's looking at us. It's kind of raining, and it's like all this whole thing. He pulls up the truck, and it's empty. We're like, what? It was the wrong truck. So it's a whole funny story. But anyways, and then like an hour later, the right truck showed up, or that truck had like two little things in there, So anyways, and that first night that they put in that first night, we had a class, and Laverne was sitting right down here, and she raises her hand and she goes, "What's with the golden statues?" That was her question, And so I was like, here we go. And it was really beautiful. I talked about this, someone asked about this like a month ago, because it was a really great opportunity for me to sit with something that I was really uncomfortable with initially. Now I'm thrilled. I would have hated the other ones. It's a strong word, hate, but I wouldn't have liked them. And for me, it was an opportunity to really sit with something that I was uncomfortable with and share, because we'd always had this dark bronze emaciated Buddhas, our simple little Buddha statue, and now we have these three things, right? And they're perfect. So what they represent specifically, without that whole long tangent, is this one over here is Samantabhadra. This is the Bodhisattva of great diligence, great practice. The elephants, the 6 tusks, represent the 6 paramitas of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. So this is the practice, the Bodhisattva practice, which is what my master always taught, and the Bodhisattva teachings of the 6 paramitas: generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. That's what that represents. The last thing the Buddha said before he died was, they asked him who was going to teach. He said, "I've been teaching you for 45 years. You've learned enough. Now strive on with diligence." So that's right effort right there. This is Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. Different Buddhist cultures will portray them differently. That one right there, the Tibetan Tanka, that's Manjushri as well, with the sword. It's considered the sword of wisdom. Cuts through ignorance. Here, same thing, Bodhisattva of wisdom, but more in a Taiwanese style. And he sits on a lion. Any of you ever been in cage with a crazy wild lion? I mean, once in a while, there's got to be somebody who's going to say yes. That's why I always ask. But so far, nobody. So imagine being in a cage with a crazy wild lion and trying to tame that lion as you're being attacked. That's a metaphor for what it's like living with your head every day. Your head is like a crazy wild lion that's just attacking you all day long and stopping you from being at peace. But with the practice of wisdom, that crazy lion becomes like a playful little kitty cat. Right? It's like a kitten sitting there. That's Manjushri. So we are Manjushri trying to tame this thing which destroys our lives all day long. And then last, which for us was super important, most Buddhist temples, you just don't see Kuan Yin as your main shrine. Right? Kuan Yin, this is the Bodhisattva of compassion. Typically portrayed in the female form, very often talked about as the female Bodhisattva. And when we thought about what does this temple need, what does this city, this country, this world need? Endless compassion. So her name, Kuan Yin, means hearer of the world's cries. The Dalai Lama, they say, is the literal rebirth of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. So Kuan Yin hears all the suffering in the world, and the vase she holds, or this one is pouring, she holds the vase of compassion and pours out compassion. So she hears the suffering and pours out compassion to help us heal our minds and our hearts. And that was to us like, that's what we need here, is the female presence of Kuan Yin pouring compassion on all of us. So that's the depth and the meaning of three of them. But yeah, so it's been a beautiful, fun journey with them. Yeah. So I'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to more than 6 million lives that were lost during this pandemic, and their family and friends who continue to suffer to this day. And to Paul during his time of rebirth, and Martina during her suffering, and the Venerable Master Ijur during her time of rebirth. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right. Sorry, went a little longer, but that was a really hard one to sum up in 2 minutes. So. But I'm glad you asked it. So our Dharma Bum host Carly has a few announcements.
Hello, everyone. As he said, I am Carly. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who know us, those who need are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, and teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Just about every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything else for that matter. A family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which currently meets once a month. We also offer a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on the website. I also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library, so if you see a book you like, take it, read it, bring it back when you're done. Also, this is not informative. They're coming soon is a Sangha social. I will say, sign up for the newsletter. If you're on social media, we're on social media. You can keep up with the stuff, see things as they develop. You can also connect with other members of the Sangha there. And that's it. If you can straighten your cushion before you go. And thank you for being here. And I hope to see you all again.
And thanks, Carly. And one last thing is we are doing our food redistribution program on Thanksgiving. This is an annual. We've had food redistribution program for 13 years. It's been on hold due to the pandemic. We're starting that up again. So we'll do our annual Thanksgiving food redistribution program. You do have to RSVP for it on the website or, like Carly said, Facebook, social media. We are going to limit it to 25 people in the dining area. We used to pack like 100 people down there, and none of us want to be down there right now with 100 people and not many windows. So we're going to limit that to 25 from 10 to 11:30. But then everybody else, you can RSVP, and we're just going to meet out front at 11:15, and we'll all go downtown together. So we'll prepare a bunch of food. For Thanksgiving, we're going to do peanut butter and jelly. So if anybody wants to donate jars of peanut butter or jelly during the week, we're also handing out socks, hand sanitizers, warm hats, so all kinds of stuff. And again, it's all on the website, but that'll be Thursday morning, 10. We'll leave here at 11:30, and then we'll be back by about 1 o'clock. So it's a pretty quick, yeah, Brian.
In terms of the donations, where do you drop them off here? Is that-
Anywhere here. Yeah, the temple during the day typically is closed, so just come during like Buddha for You hours, and you could leave it with Travis or myself down there, or obviously any class time or whatever, and you could put it across from the office or, somewhere, and someone will probably collect it. Or if you're hungry, take a jar of peanut butter. Yeah. So, thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.